The CNBC app. Global market news in one place. Customizable sections and personalized alerts. Stocks tracking, interactive charts and market insights all in your hands. Stay connected. Stay informed. Download the CNBC app today.
A very warm welcome to Squawk Europe. I'm Steve Sedgwick with Ben Boulos, and these are your headlines. Well, surprises galore already for the new UK Prime Minister Andy Burnham, who's pledged immediate action on the cost of living, scrapping VAT from electricity bills in the past few moments. That's after surprising everybody with announcing John Healey as his pick for Chancellor, as he vows to break away from the failures of previous governments.
We will make this moment a circuit breaker for Britain, bringing forward the biggest changes in the last 40 years. A new political model and a new economic model.
Yemen's Houthis impose a naval embargo on Saudi Arabia, potentially opening a new front in the Iran war, while President Trump warns Iran will pay for the deaths of US soldiers. Novartis reaffirms its guidance after beating on the top and bottom lines, with second quarter net sales coming in at almost $14.5 billion. We'll be hearing from CEO Vas Narasimhan later today. That's at 4 p.m. London time.
All right, let's do you know what? Let's do this straight away. What is the yield? Good morning, Ben.
Good morning to you.
Here's my first broadside for the new UK government as well. Great new announcements just come out in the last couple of moments. VAT on energy bills has been cut. That is the first surprise announcement, helping on electricity bills, helping out beleaguered households in a measure which will typically apparently cut £45 off a typical electricity bill in the United Kingdom. Okay? Per annum, I believe that is. Yeah, great. Okay, great. That's
paid for by scrapping the digital ID scheme. Well, in part.
Paid for by whatever. Look, here's the thing. The average mortgage in the United Kingdom is £205,000. I've just looked it up. I didn't know this. It's £205,000, right? And the fact is, and I'm asking the team to get a board together because I just want to show them something. Let me show you this. This is the 10-year gilts in the United Kingdom compared with BTP yields in Italy. Now, people may be saying to me, well, what on earth are you looking at that for as well? What's that got to do with Andy Burnham? It's got a lot to do with Andy Burnham because people are very concerned about the fiscal and inflationary position in the United Kingdom. That's why we trade at a premium, not only to the German government bunds, but we trade at a premium to the Italian 10-year paper, okay? And you can see from that we trade roughly at a 1% premium, right? What is 1% on the average UK mortgage? Well, I can tell you the answer because we've just done the math. It's £2,050 because if the average mortgage is £105,000, we'll take 1% of that, okay? Right, but let's just say the fiscal position isn't down the whole thing. It's partly about inflation and other factors as well. So let's just halve the difference. I'm doing that for being very kind to the government, to every government of the UK, right? So 1% divided by 2 is half of a percent, £2,050. I'm doing this maths very simply because I know a lot of Labour MPs don't get it. Is £1,025, right? £1,025 on every mortgage in this country is, guess what? Is more than £45. No, seriously, it is. Yeah, there you go. That's for your Labour MPs out there. So it's all very well having largesse and giving money away. But if we are paying more for our debt as households, more of our debt as a country, more of our debt of corporations borrowing because of being too generous with fiscal largesse and not tight enough on the rules, we all pay for it, okay? So you can have the headlines, but unless we can find somewhere to pay for it, we pay more as a country. That is my warning to John Healey. That is my warning to the UK government.
And I mean, I suppose all eyes will be on the influence of John Healey on this, because he does have experience of working in the Treasury.
He worked for Gordon Brown.
He did, and he's made clear his view on the necessity of increasing defence spending. But if you take into account the planned increase in defence and the planned increase for health, he'll need to find savings of around 10 billion from somewhere else. Now, if he's worked in the Treasury, he'll understand the importance of balancing the books and not making unfunded spending commitments, which we all know how that goes. We've seen that within too recent memory. So I think a lot will depend on how much sway he has from the Treasury over the bigger decisions that Andy Burnham wants to make next door at number 10.
And yeah, you mentioned defence, and I thoroughly believe that we do need a defence policy that gets us to those NATO levels. He resigned, as you mentioned, from the Starmer government because he did not think the new defence plan for Great Britain was anywhere near fit for purpose as well. So he would not have come back into a new government without getting those guarantees. Who is the new Defence Secretary? It is Wes Streeting, who was a former leadership contender as well. So all very fascinating. And of course, if it's not unfunded, they have to find the money from somewhere. And would that come from tax rises? And there's already been warnings, of course, from the likes of Jamie Dimon, is be careful who you tax extra. We'll go into all that now. It's all change at Downing Street. The Starmerites, there's an interesting word. Starmer, sounds like a rock, doesn't it? The Starmerites are out with the new UK Prime Minister Andy Burnham completely moulding his new cabinet to his ambitions after Keir Starmer's resignation in a blockbuster afternoon for British politics. We may be overplaying it with blockbuster. It's not exactly the Odyssey, is it? They don't last as long as the Odyssey. Long-dated gilt yields crept upwards to their highest level since May, even before any of the great offices of state were announced. Do you want to know the great office? I should explain that to our international viewers. It's the Home Office, the Exchequer, which is the role of the Chancellor, the Foreign Secretary as well. So they're the three great offices of state apart from being Prime Minister. There you go. Right, let's move on. In his first speech as Prime Minister, Burnham vowed to do away with the orthodoxies of the last 40 years. OK, what? Because it's different this time? What orthodoxies you want to do away with? Very interesting. Taking direct aim at the legacy of Thatcherism, OK, and pledging to end rough sleeping as his first priority in government.
We will make this moment a circuit breaker for Britain, bringing forward the biggest changes in the last 40 years. A new political model and a new economic model. In the 1980s, Britain took some wrong turns. Political power was centralised, economic power privatised, large parts of the country deindustrialised, and they still haven't recovered. Many feel as though they're still in decline, and they don't have the ability to turn things around. And that's why we will change politics, to make it more collaborative, more about problem solving than point scoring. And we will take power out of here and carry it into every postcode in the land so that they can do more.
And Ritika joins us now with more detail on Burnham's new cabinet.
Well, in the last hour, Andy Burnham has made his first move as Prime Minister, slashing VAT from electricity bills. It comes ahead of his first cabinet meeting today, with an announcement on the cost of living also expected. There's speculation he could make moves on the personal tax allowance, the amount employees earn before income tax is applied, which has been frozen for the last 5 years. Also reportedly in focus, the cost of transport and rent controls. But the biggest surprise was kept until after the debt markets closed. Financial media had all but declared Shabana Mahmood new Chancellor of the Exchequer in the run-up to Burnham's coronation. Instead, he's chosen John Healey, the former Defence Secretary, whose resignation 5 weeks ago dealt the final blow to Keir Starmer's hopes of defending against Burnham's challenge. And the move comes after those rumours Mahmood or Ed Miliband could be made the second most powerful politician in Britain reportedly provoked pushback from their opposing factions in the Labour Party. So what do we know about Healey? Well, he obviously feels strongly about defence funding, accusing Starmer of being unable and the Treasury unwilling to commit the resources he believed necessary when he resigned in June. He's adamant he wants spending to increase to 3% of GDP by the end of the decade. Beyond that, Healey has served on the Labour front bench almost continuously over the last quarter century, serving in ministerial posts relating to housing, local government and the Treasury. Speaking outside number 10, Burnham set out his vision for the economy.
Later this year, I will bring forward a new plan for Britain, a 10-year plan, laying out a path from where we are now to where I believe we all want Britain to be, wherever we're coming from, whatever party we support. But I can do something to give people some breathing space now, some help with the cost of living. And I will set out some of those measures starting tomorrow, including how we pay for them.
Meanwhile, we've had the first reactions from across the pond. Donald Trump wished Burnham good luck and Godspeed, saying he has a big job ahead of him. While JP Morgan boss Jamie Dimon also waded in, warning of adverse consequences if there's a tax hike on banks. Kate Shoesmith, Director of Policy and Insights at the BCC, will be joining you, Steve.
Yes, indeed. And let's get to Kate. Kate, very nice to see you today. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, what do you make of what you've seen in the first not even 24 hours of Andy Burnham?
Well, so far we have very little to go on. I mean, it's really good to see a Prime Minister talking about having a pro-business agenda. So over the next 24, 48 hours, we want to see how he delivers on that. For instance, hearing about the VAT cuts on electricity bills for households, that will be welcome news, I'm sure. For businesses, though, they tell us that energy costs is something that's really worrying them. And around 50% were saying to us that they were thinking they were going to have to put their prices up, given what was happening with the Iran conflict and in the Middle East, because of the impact on energy. And businesses just feel very squeezed right now. So in terms of thinking about the parity of how do we address the cost of living crisis, the cost of doing business is something that we really want to see action on as well.
But Kate, the last Chancellor of the Exchequer told us that she'd done everything right in her Mansion speech as well. I'm pretty sure a lot of your members beg to differ about the cost of making do with business taxes and employment costs going up as well. Is there any chance that this Prime Minister and this Chancellor of the Exchequer will not only say that they are pro-business, but actually do something about it?
But we absolutely hope so. So it's really understood that there's fiscal rules. You know, it's explained very clearly at the start of this segment about why we need to pay attention to the debt and the bond market. That's understood. Businesses run their businesses. They understand the balance sheet. So they get that. When we've looked, though, if you take an average SME of about a £5 million turnover, the cost stack of successive policy decisions has increased for them by 72%. So there are certain things, there's certain measures where we have to look again. The biggest cost is labour. So when you think about how do you employ more people, when you go back to the autumn budget of 2024, the increase in national insurance and the lowering of that threshold, that had a huge impact on staffing costs. And actually now we're talking about how there's over 1 million young people who are out of work, not in education, employment and training. So how can we address that? Is it time to have a national insurance holiday for if we want to employ more young people under the age of 25? Does that give businesses a bit of breathing space? We have to look at each of these measures. So successive policy decisions, which of those can we change? And which new measures should we be really thinking about so that if you can get businesses to the place where they are growing, they will create jobs, they will create opportunities, that will help address the cost of living crisis too.
Kate, in terms of the talk about devolved fiscal powers and responsibility, what's the view from businesses on that? Do they welcome it in the sense that local politicians perhaps know their area and its needs better than Westminster does? Or is there a risk it creates, I suppose, a patchwork and an inconsistency?
There's very much, I'd say, a mixed set of views depending on where you are. So we've seen different moves around the creation of mayoral combined authorities, and you know we have the advantage of having chambers up and down the country across the UK who have developed their working relationship with those different authorities. We've just seen certain announcements around unitary authorities, but they're still bedding in. There's quite a long way to go before we understand exactly what the regional devolution is going to look like. But if I take one thing, we saw the change in business rates and revaluations really add costs to businesses with a physical presence. So say hospitality businesses on the high street, etc. And Andy Burnham said he's going to do something about that. If those business rates are collected locally and then spent locally, the organisations that understand best what to do with them will be the local businesses and the local politicians in most senses. So really getting to grips with that, but they've got to have proper power to understand that investment. What it can't do is it can't pay down the local authority debt, which we know has been increasing. It's got to be put in terms of using it for the redeveloping our high streets. It's got to be about how do you make a difference to people's lives on a day-to-day basis that is actually tangible.
I just want to get your thoughts on one idea that was floated in the last few weeks, that to pay for potential business rate cuts or reduction for pubs and high street shops, there was talk of this warehouse tax. The aim of that, of course, being to target the big online retailers. What is the business view on that? Could there be unintended negative consequences for the non-online tech giant retailers?
There absolutely could. You've got businesses that have a huge footprint, a physical property footprint, because of the virtue of what they do as an organisation. So we've really got to think through. Now I understand that there needs to be some mechanism where physical properties versus digital online presences, you need to smooth that out a bit. We've seen a growth there, but actually, how do you make it really fair? Well, one of the things that the Labour Party put in their manifesto pre-general election was to have a full root and branch reform of business rates. It's absolutely about time. It's a really antiquated tax. As I said earlier, the revaluations have caused havoc with some businesses. It's caused significant costs to be added at a time when they were actually told that their business rates were going to be going down. So how do we get some fairness and parity in it? You've got to start again, actually. Some of these things, you have to think they weren't made for this time of online, different organisations, digital presence. How do we make it fairer for everybody? But ultimately, you've got to be thinking about how do you help a business grow? And each of these measures, that should be the very first test. How does it help growth in a firm? Does it help them scale up? Does it help them develop? Does it help them export? What does it do for them? And that's how you measure success on what each of the different successive policy announcements Andy Burnham will be coming up with in the coming days.
OK, makes a lot of sense. Kate, thank you very much. Kate Shoesmith, Director of Policy and Insights at the British Chambers of Commerce. And we have to leave it there because we've got so much coming up on the show, including this. President Trump warning that Iran will pay for attacks on US military personnel. We'll be live in Abu Dhabi after a 10th night of strikes. Plus, Novartis reaffirms its guidance after beating on the top and bottom lines in the second quarter. We'll have more on the numbers later this hour. And we'll also speak to the CEO of Finland's state-owned energy firm, Fortum. That's at 8:25 London time.
Executive Decisions is the new podcast from CNBC, where I ask powerful leaders about their decisions that changed everything. I'm Steve Sedgwick, and here's the CEO of Siemens Energy, Christian Bruch.
Business leaders should not stay quiet in a world which is super complex. We sit in a privileged position, and we have to use that to ensure that a society remains prosperous, stable, successful.
That's Executive Decisions with me, Steve Sedgwick. Get it wherever you're listening to this.
Norway's state-owned utility Statkraft posted underlying operating EBITDA of 6.6 billion Norwegian crowns. That's sharply higher on the year as higher Nordic power prices boosted results. Birgitte Ringstad Vartdal is the CEO of Statkraft and joins us now. Birgitte, just begin by running us through the figures then.
Yeah, so thanks a lot. Statkraft delivered, as you pointed to, strong results for the second quarter, mainly driven by higher prices in the Nordics. But we also contributed with higher generation in Europe on our gas-fired power plants and our hydropower plants across the continent. We also had a positive profit before tax, and then we had a negative profit after tax due to high resource rent tax in the Nordics.
I'm interested in this deal that was mentioned about supply of more than 800 gigawatts of wind energy in Italy. Just tell us about that and how that fits into your bigger strategy around renewables.
Yeah, so Statkraft's strategy is about developing renewable power, operating our renewable assets, and also being the best provider of market solutions. Across Europe, we have a big market activity where we enter into contracts with industry, also with developers of renewable power. So we kind of alleviate their risk, both on the supply side and the demand side. And the deal in Italy is one such example, where we provide electricity contracts to customers.
But Geeta, there is this tension, which you know far more about than I ever will, and that is between the extraordinary new demands being placed on energy systems, electrical systems around the world by data centres, fabrication plants, etc. as well, compared with your job, which is providing that electricity as well. Tell me a little bit more about this tension and your concerns and your hopes.
Sure. So the demand for electricity is ever growing, and our projection is that the electricity generation in Europe will double towards 2050. This is driven both by what you point to as new demand for data centers, but also electrification of industry, electrification of transport, electrification of buildings. So all this together adds to a more electrified system with lower fossil emissions and consumption moving from fossil to electrification.
And yet when I look at, I'll go back to basics here, water, and you allude to it in various of your pieces of copy over the years as well. The hydrological situation in the Nordics as well remains incredibly challenging, and I noticed the lower hydropower production in Norway because of that very issue as well. And yet Norway's another one of these countries which is really thinking, as you know, again, full well, about how the data centre demand is going to be absorbed. We just don't have enough water, do we?
No, so Norway has 90% of its power production is hydropower at the moment, and then 10% is wind power. We don't have a lot of opportunities in building out new rivers and new generation. But Norwegian hydropower system combined with more onshore wind power is a superb combination. And Norway has a competitive advantage in terms of the natural resources that we have in wind and hydropower. So in combination, we have the opportunity to build out more power in our system. But as other countries, we also need to see more grid build out, and we see the debate you point to on data center versus other industry. And one of the dilemmas here is the speed that we see in the data center industry versus other industries. And we need to find a balance between developing more data centers, but also electrify the society.
But Geeta, let me get back to your first answer to Ben, if I may. And you were talking about the doubling of demand for European electricity over the next few years as well. Extraordinary numbers. Can we satiate that demand and also answer the three questions posed by the energy dilemma to make it green, affordable and reliable as well?
Yes, because renewable energy contributes on all the parts of the trilemma. It contributes to energy security by homegrown energy. It contributes to lower emissions, and it also contributes to lower prices. If you look across Europe, the countries that have most renewable installed in their mix is the countries that have the lowest electricity prices. There are dilemmas in the build-out. We need to speed up permits. We need to speed up grid. We also need to have sufficient flexibility in the system. So it's not sort of a very easy task, but it is a doable task with what we see currently of technology and opportunities.
OK, Birgitte Ringstad-Vartdal, the CEO of Statkraft, thanks for joining us here on Squawk Box Europe.